welcome to the MMA podcast. I'm Karyn Bryant.
What's up, guys? Jouban with you.
So lots of stuff going on. We will talk about the action at UFC Vegas 6, where Frankie Edgar defeated Pedro Munhoz in the main event, and also look ahead a little bit to this weekend. We've got a light heavyweight event. Also talk a little bit about Ryan Bader. But listen, Alan, how's your training going? I know you've been back at it. All your IG posts are making it look like you're looking like you're getting ready for a fight or something.
Yeah, no, I feel good. We were just talking. It's got out of Black House. I got some rounds in with Sean Merriman. Thank you for correcting the last name for me, Karyn. And he's enormous. But body's feeling good for me, and I'm excited. I'm still just waiting on the UFC to give me that matchup and the date. But they know October's my date. Likely that puts me fighting in Abu Dhabi, because there's going to be a tremendous amount of cards in Abu Dhabi. And they're probably going to go back and do the same thing where they fight 4 or 5 fights in a row there. So I'm kind of mentally preparing to go there, but I'm excited. I'm excited to get back in there and kind of get that momentum behind me again.
Yeah, if you do end up there, I would recommend you doing some training outside right now, which I know you have been doing to get used to that weather. It's a little different, but it's easier to cut weight over there.
Yeah, for sure. And I wouldn't mind getting on that Anderson Silva, Uriah Hall card.
Yeah.
Just being Anderson Silva's last fight and in Abu Dhabi, and he was the guy that I was always like a hero of mine when I was up and coming. I think it'd be an honor to fight on the same Anderson's last card.
Yeah, it'd be cool. I don't know yet what's happening with all that. I know I'm working the next few events in Vegas, and we'll see. But yeah, this weekend we had UFC Vegas 7, and it was a lot of fun. You know, it was a card that got a lot of changes. There was a lot of things going on where people were hearing about positive COVID tests and some things like that. And oh my God, it's mayhem. It wasn't mayhem. What had happened, there were some people that had gotten some positive tests. One person that I know of then the next day tested negative again, who had tested negative on Thursday and negative on Saturday. But the one he took on Friday came back. And so they sent him home and cleared out some other people, re-swapped out some people. They were more diligent. They're very diligent anyway at the Apex about everybody wearing masks around all the time. But then we even had more controls about how many people could be in this room or that one, because they really were taking precaution, because there were some coaches that had shown up too on Friday morning that tested positive. But earlier in the week, there were some, rumblings that something might be up with the OSP fight. So when that one dropped off, I wasn't surprised. So I think they're just putting him in Metafield on a couple weeks from now. They're going to just push that forward. I think, don't hold me to that, but I think that's what's going to happen. So yeah, there was some shuffling. So we lost that co-main. Some things got moved around. For example, Daniel Rodriguez ended up fighting. He was supposed to fight somebody else. His opponent fell out. He was supposed to fight Sato. Sato fell out. And then also Grant's opponent fell out. So a match was made between those guys. But I guess dig into the main event, Alan. What was your take?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, first off, initial thoughts, tremendous main event. It was a very much, I don't want to say it reminded me of the Poirier main event that we had recently. It wasn't as violent, I don't find, but it reminded me of that main event in high skill level. 2 guys going 5 rounds, great boxing, great just MMA skills with Frankie. The jabs leading to the takedowns, the low kicks, everything that was involved in that fight. You see high level, high IQ in these type of main events. But of course, in these 5-round fights, guys are starting to take a lot of damage. Just wasn't too much of a shorten your lifespan like we've seen in some of these, like, I hate to say it, but like Dustin Poirier fights and stuff. But tremendous fight. But at the end of the day, Frankie is a legend. Love him forever. Pedro is a friend of mine, but I thought Pedro won the fight.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. It was a great fight, and it was a very technical fight, and it was a very, very good fight. And I thought Pedro won the first round. Then I thought Frankie won the second round. And then I thought things got kind of muddy and a little confusing. And in the moment, I think I recognized Pedro's successes more. And then I think it was the 4th round or something, they put up some punch stats. And Frankie was ahead on the punch stats at that point. And then overall, the numbers do favor Pedro by a little bit. And when you looked at it, you saw the breakdown, though. So Pedro had the advantage, mostly landing all those leg kicks, which we saw really hurt Frankie. I put actually a story in the evening because I saw Frankie heading to the airport limping like crazy. So the low kicks were the story for Pedro, whereas Frankie landed more to the body and the head. So in the moment, I think I was like, I don't know if Frankie pulled this off. I thought maybe it was going to go to Pedro at the end, but when it went to Frankie, I wasn't surprised. Like, I didn't think it was some robbery. I didn't think it was surprising, and that was going on my memory from those last number stats that went up, thinking that Frankie did have the advantage overall in all the stats. The takedowns, there was a couple for Frankie that you could score. I did think Pedro seemed to lead the dance more, but when you really looked at what was happening, he might have been leading, but Frankie always throws combinations, and Pedro would land maybe like a jab and a low kick or something, but Frankie would be like, pow, 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 always two or three punches, and it is a really close fight. I mean, that's how so many of Frankie's fights are going. I can't say robbery either way, and I don't know.
Yeah. Fights are getting harder and harder to score, and I brought this up numerous times on this show. It's tough to say. The fighters are evolving. The scoring system is getting more and more difficult. Yeah. And we're having these closer 5-round fights. And like you just said, when there's a round or two that's kind of muddy, then you can't really say that there was robbery one direction. Of course, everybody who had scored one direction and it didn't go that way will say, oh, this guy was robbed.
Right.
I think Pedro won, but I'm not going to say it was highway robbery because I myself had 1 or 2 rounds thinking this was a close round. Okay? And so if it's a close round, you could easily say, well, if I thought it was close, then 3 judges, probably 1 or 2 of them might see the opposite way, and that's why we get these cards that are split decisions. So it's not a robbery. But yes, going into the final round, I remember tweeting, I believe Frankie needs a finish because I believe he's down 3-1.
3-1. Right, I think a lot of people thought it was 3-1.
3-1. And 2 of those rounds that I gave, that Frankie, I thought Frankie lost, but they were close. So I really didn't know, but I thought Pedro did enough. He landed 1 or 2 power shots that kind of hurt Frankie, or you saw Frankie's kind of lipping, and you go, okay, now we're seeing the damage, which is supposed to score the highest. And as you mentioned, Pedro was kind of leading the dance. He was putting Frankie on the fence. This was just stylistically how the fight was playing out, but Pedro was pushing the charge forward, so I had to give him credit for that with the power. And so Frankie did win that final round in my eyes. I don't know what the scorecard said, but in my eyes, Frankie came back, won that final round. In my opinion, he still lost the fight 3-2, but what I want to say is Frankie won that fight by winning the final round because whatever we had it, there was a lot of muddy rounds in our eyes and in the judges' eyes, but by Frankie coming back and solidifying that final round for himself, he won that fight. And so his judges are going to say, it doesn't matter, man. It's a difference of opinion. Some people had it this way. Some people had it that way. It's an opinion. But you winning that final round guarantees you that fight. You lose that last round, you lose the fight, Frankie. So Frankie, being the experienced vet, won that round, won the fight. Congratulations to him. But I understand that Pedro has got to be upset this morning because he did everything he had to do to get that victory, to earn that victory that night.
Yeah, and I guess he put out on Instagram a whole post kind of demanding a rematch from Dana. Yeah. So if we look at the judges, 2 judges gave round 1 to Pedro. 1 judge gave round 1 to Frankie. I thought round 1 was Pedro's. Mm-hmm. All 3 judges gave round 2 to Frankie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then when it gets to round 3, 2 judges gave round 3 to Pedro. 2 judges gave... all 3 judges gave round 4 to Pedro.
Mm-hmm.
But then 2 judges gave round 5 to Frankie. So it's very interesting. On one judge gave 3 rounds to Frankie. 1 judge gave 3 rounds to Frankie. 1 judge gave 1 round to Frankie. So it's really interesting. Like it's a we'll put it up the visual as well, but it's very confusing. So literally 1 judge gave 3 rounds to Frankie, 1 judge gave 3 rounds to Frankie, 1 judge gave 1 round to Frankie, and it's like the only one they agreed on was that round 2 was Frankie's. Other than that, it's like weird.
That's what's so crazy. I mean, I don't like that inaccuracy though. It's one thing when there was a round that was very close. Let's just call it the 4th round or something. If the 4th round was very close and 1 judge saw it one way and 2 judges saw it the other way, That's what a split decision is, when there's a close round and people of opinion see the other ways. But when it's scattered like this, and you're saying one judge gave round 1 to Frankie, and then another judge gave round 5 to Pedro.
Yeah.
What are they looking at? I mean, they're so inaccurate right now. There needs to be, I don't want to call for the whole thing, but I mean, it just needs to be, we need to sit down with the judges again and say, this is first and foremost what we're looking for, gentlemen. Right. Because right now it's old rule, new rule, difference of opinion, when it shouldn't be like that. It should be damage, control, strikes. It should be scored a little bit easier. We got to figure it out.
Okay, but I will ask you something that I asked Kamaru on the post show, and this is something I would love for people to chime in on too. Give us your MMA Heat hot take on this. But I posed the argument that judging it actually could be better right now because there are no crowds to influence them. And the fact that a lot of time you would throw something and everyone goes crazy and then maybe the judge is swayed by the crowd. So I posed the argument that perhaps we actually are getting purer judging right now. I'm not sure if we are or aren't, but it's an idea.
I like the fact to think that yes, because the crowd does weigh heavily on influencing a judge. Obviously, we know if a hometown fighter is fighting and he throws a shot and the crowd erupts, even if it deflected off of the shoulder, the eruption, the energy in the crowd weighs heavily on the opinion of the judge. Just like us as viewers, as spectators, when we're watching the fight and we hear Paul Felder go, oh my God, that was a clean shot. In our head, ding, ding, that was a scored shot, even if Paul Felder might have been wrong. Right. And so when the crowd might be wrong, it influences the judges. As you said, we're taking that out of the options right now. So it should strengthen the judging. Right. But it's human error. It's human error, and we're talking about something happening live from 3 different points of view. And so 3 different angles that they're seeing something from 3 different angles while live that it's happening. And they have to take everything that happened in 5 minutes and determine, it's funny when they go, face punches score heavier than leg kicks, or ground control scores heavier than cage control. And that ideally is correct. But now think about taking, at the end of 5 minutes, you have 30 seconds to go, okay, how many face punches determine how many leg kicks compared to how many ground, how many this, and then who walked forward, and now who's cut, but who landed more jabs. I'm going to go with this guy. It's very tough. Yeah, it's super tough to come up with an accurate answer after all that is happening. But I agree. You take the crowd out of it, it should be strengthening the judges' selection. Yeah. I don't know what's happening, though. I don't know if it's really happening for them.
I don't know either. Okay, so Pedro really wants the rematch. Pedro was ranked number 5 going into this fight. Frankie wasn't ranked as a bantamweight because he was coming down from featherweight. Dana says he believes that Aljo will be next for Jan. And we know that Cody Garbrandt is actually still ranked as a bantamweight in the top 5. He's number 3, but he's challenging for the flyweight title in November. He's challenging Figueiredo, so we kind of take him out of the mix right now. When you look at Will, what happens? Does Frankie then just come in right at number 5 since he took Pedro out? What happens there? Because right around the 5 and the 6 and the 7s, you have Jimmy Rivera, you have Jose Aldo. Like I said, we take out Garbrandt, but we have Corey Sandhagen, and then you have Aljo and Marlon Moraes. So what do you think should be next for Frankie?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I don't know. It's always interesting when somebody wins a fight, but in the eyes, and look, I don't want to put words in Dana White's mouth. I didn't hear what he said post-fight, but Dana usually sees it somewhat the way that the masses see it. I want to go out on a limb with that. So in my mind, I'm kind of thinking Dana White knows the truth. I think Pedro probably won, but Frankie's did what he had to do. So do you then start pushing Frankie for a title? I don't see it. I see it as kind of like, all right, well, Frankie's a guy that's a legend and a main event guy. We could have some fun matchups with those 4, 5, 6, 7 slots, but he doesn't necessarily get escorted to the front of the line, especially off of a victory like that. I mean, we did see Jose Aldo lose the fight that we all thought he won and then get escorted to the front of the line because Dana White kind of agreed with the masses that I thought Jose won that fight, but the judges didn't see it that way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Pedro as well. Maybe he loses some of his slots in the ranking system, but still gets another big fight, depending on how Dana White and the matchmakers saw the outcome as well.
That's true, because he does sometimes do that. But Close fight. I mean, Frankie's 38. He'll be 39, I believe, in October or so. So that's the other thing is, even though he's like, look, there's still a lot of dog left in here, a lot of fight left in the dog, rather, and all this stuff, and he believes he's making a run. He said something about, feeling good in there at that weight, not carrying anything extra. His chin held up. With the weight cut, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously we all know he's already in the Hall of Fame, and he's now one of, there was only 11 other fighters who have scored wins in 3 different weight classes. So now there's 12 people total who have done it. And there was only, I think, only a couple of other people who have scored fight of the nights in more than one weight class. And Frankie has done that. We already know he had the all-time most fight time in the UFC. So it's just setting more and more records. The thing about it is even if you thought it was a close fight, even if you thought Pedro won, it's so hard to be mad at Frankie. You know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like, you can't take it out on Frankie.
And I feel like I saw that in social media.
Yeah.
Coming into the last round, I was tweeting and stuff, and I'm seeing other people who are, respected journalists or whatnot, and they kind of had it a lot like us, saying, I think Pedro's ahead, or I think Frankie needs a finish.
Right.
And I think that was the general consensus at the end of the fight. But after Frankie won, you weren't seeing robbery from the masses. You were kind of seeing like, wow, close fight, because Frankie's so respected. And again, not only is he so respected, but he came back and gave himself the opportunity for the judges to give him the victory, because he won that final round. And that kind of came down to be the outcome fight, even though we had it scored differently. So you can't really be mad at him, somebody who's so heavily respected and wins the last round of the fight.
Yeah, and I also think it was a classic case of what I often do, which is when I think it's not like I necessarily was pulling for one person, but there is that veteran that you're like, come on, Frankie, like, I wanted to see him succeed in a new weight class. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to see him succeed. Unfortunately, that meant Pedro would have to lose, but I wanted a success story for Frankie. So I think sometimes when you are looking for that, again, you focus on what the opponent is doing better, because you're like, oh, God, this is going to be hard. Oh, look how hard this is going to be for Frankie to win this fight. So I might have even focused more on Pedro in that fight. Do you know what I mean? And I've said that before, that happens. If you're fighting somebody, I look at all the success the other guy is having.
I do that all the time. I was going for Pedro,
right?
Just because me and Pedro have a friendship.
Yeah.
But when it was all said and done, and they reminded me that Frankie was 38, the same age as me, I was like, okay. I'm always kind of going for the older guy in the sport, So I was happy to see that at 38, he still got it. Like you said, his chin held up, his speed was still there. And he looked great.
Yeah, Frankie's awesome. Okay, so as we mentioned, and Pedro's awesome too. I mean, obviously. So this card did go through some weird changes. So when we didn't have OSP versus Menefield, instead we got Practio versus Mike Rodriguez. Now, both of these guys were coming in on skids. They were both lost their last 2 fights. It was kind of a winner go home. On this one, we kind of thought Rodriguez would have the edge here when we were doing this one on the pre-fight, just because 8.5-inch reach advantage, and there was just stuff about him that seemed a little bit more together. I don't know, I guess maybe the way he lost to me didn't seem as bad as the way that Practio lost his. But on that fight, I thought it was he got a first-round knockout. You can't get mad at that.
Yeah. He looked good, and his story was kind of like he had that plum, that clinch, and he's working the little inside elbows. I love when I see people who recognize the openings in those areas. He was definitely one of them. He was getting really fancy with some of those inside tie-style elbows, but he looked good. He had a strong clinch. I don't want to move fast forward too fast from this fight, but another strong clinch fight was the Jordan Wright fight.
That's right, Jordan Knight.
He got in there, and he locked up that clinch so tight his opponent could not get out, and he did such a good job at connecting knee to elbow every time, with bringing his knees up high. Got his opponent out there too. So 2 great clinches there in this card.
Yeah, that was on the prelims, and he was fighting Ike Villanueva. And if you saw the cut, it was so disgusting. So Jordan came in at short notice. He'd been training for other fights. He was supposed to be a contender at one point. He is trained by Vladimir Matyashenko and Antony Hardong, who are 2 UFC veterans. So they're my buddies. I went and hung out with them after. It was really nice to meet Jordan. And he told me that he'd been training with you only a few weeks ago and stuff. Usually he's a middleweight. He took this fight at light heavyweight and came in and won. But yeah, if you see the pictures, I know Herb Dean had reshared it from somebody else, but the cut on Villanueva, you literally can see the muscle and the nerves exposed over his eye. That's why when the doctor saw it, like, it's so gnarly. And they were like, yeah, no, there's going to be permanent, like, muscle and nerve damage and stuff. Brutal.
Yeah, it was, so Jordan, real quick backstory, Jordan Wright, when I was training at Legends MMA 15 years ago, he was there, and he was a kid, and he was this kind of awkwardly built kid because he was still growing, coming into his body, but he was a gymnast or something his whole life. So although he was still kind of flashy in the Beverly Hills Ninja, I think, he was young, and, we were a little bit older. We could see the potential and the technique and the balance and the strength in this kid. He later on went to Jackson Winklejohn, and the guy is so freakishly strong because of his background in training. And so when I went and trained with him a couple weeks ago, right before I got COVID, now he's a big man. Now he's a 185 or bigger than me. When I first knew him, he was a kid. Yeah. And we got in the clinch, and I have a very good clinch. And this guy, I remember feeling the clinch and thinking, I'm stuck. This guy has got a freakishly strong clinch, probably from doing the rings or gymnastics. Right. And so I remember telling some buddies, I said, I tell you what, man, his clinch is strong. And sure enough, he gets him in there and goes for broke. He locks it in. His opponent could not get out, brings the knees up beautifully, and ended the fight with it. So, if you're in the 185 division, future reference, don't get in Jordan Wright's clinch. It is phenomenally strong, and he's very, very accurate with it.
Well, yeah, and the funny thing is too is his nickname is the Beverly Hills Ninja, but he's got that baby face and everything. Yeah. Great kicks from Anthony. But I was joking with him, like, I feel like you should be like Jordan, like Sir Lancelot, like Knight instead of Wright. You know what I mean? Like, you're so like clean cut, and he's just like a God-fearing man, and he's just so clean cut. And we were joking around. I went to see them after, and was hanging out with them, and I was kind of telling him some stories and getting him ready for the UFC. And we were joking. I was like, I hope I didn't just freak this nice young man out. You know what I mean? Like. But yeah, welcome to the UFC. Good for him. So, and it's nice to see more local talent that we know now. Speaking of local talent, okay, so on the main card also we had Austin Hubbard lost to Joe Solecki. He got submitted, kind of a standing guillotine, which was, a standing rear naked choke, which was sort of surprising because he didn't fight the hands at all, which was a little weird. The Agapova-Shanna Dobson fight, that one was interesting too because Dobson was on a 3-fight skid. It was definitely one of those win or go home for her, and she pulled it off. She was a huge underdog in this fight, and she won. But yeah, the first fight on the main card, so it was welterweights. It was Danny Rodriguez versus Dwight Grant, who you have fought before. And so I mentioned this at the top of the show. Both of them had other opponents that dropped out. So I was talking to our boy Joe Schilling about this because they put this fight together. So Joe tells me that backstage when they find out the two opponents are going to be gone, Joe goes over to Sean Shelby, renegotiates a 4-fight deal for D-Rod, got him more money and everything like that, and put that fight together against Dwight. So then I was like, well, strategically, what do you think? And this and that. He's like, I don't think it'll be that different. Their stances are kind of the same, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, D-Rod has a tough first round and then turns around and wins the fight and goes home with a bonus, I think. Did he get a bonus? I think he did because Dana even said he was going to pay people after, though. Dana was going to, give those side bonuses out.
Yeah. Oh, Dana said that?
He said that after that he was going to give extra money to people. Gotcha.
Yeah, that was crazy. I saw the news that the fight got switched. Yeah. D-Rod kind of hit me up. Yo, you saw who I'm fighting? So, yeah, let's talk real quick. So we chatted on the phone real quick. And, it was just a quick thing about obviously you watch my fight. He said, yeah, I watched your fight. Yeah. He goes, yeah, he kind of backs up a lot. I go, yeah, man, he could be the kind of guy that backs up a lot. I go, obviously you're in a 25-foot octagon, so this kind of helps you. I go, but he's got a long reach, 78-inch reach, good footwork, and he just throws these loopy shots. So it's a little bit weird, man. It did not go like that at all. It was not a backing up fight. These guys went for it right away, and it was a very exciting fight. Daniel got clipped on the chin, went down, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He survived, and he never really looked like he wasn't fighting back. Right. But to be honest, probably 7 out of 10 referees would have stopped this fight already. There was a point where he wasn't really responding, but he was still in a good position where he was kind of balled up with his hands up. But nonetheless, Dwight Grant said, I'm going for broke, and Dwight punched himself out. It was a mistake on Dwight Grant to go for it, to just go for the punch, and hope that the referee stopped it. It kind of showed me a little bit of a lack in his submission game because he had D-Rod hurt, and he had D-Rod kind of just trying to survive. And if he would have done something like put D-Rod on his back and where he can maybe finish him stronger, or a slap on a submission or take his back, then he maybe could have looked for a finish, but he said, I'm just going to go for it. And D-Rod's a tough guy. It's hard to put him away with these kind of like glancing shots when he's covered up. The ref did not step in. Obviously, D-Rod got back up, and the rest was history. But that's how Daniel Rodriguez fights, man. He's always got this, like, the 2 and the 3 always seem to follow when he starts throwing a punch. And he gets you from odd angles, and he's got big power. It was a hell of a fight, man. And the dude, you could see the exhilaration, the excitement on D-Rod's face, because he's had some great success in the UFC so far. He's on a 3-fight win streak. And the first win was a bonus winning fight over a name.
Tim Means, yeah, he came in on short notice and submitted Tim Means.
Tim Means, I mean, that's a huge win. The second fight wasn't as exciting, but still a lot of strikes thrown. But you can kind of see in this fight that he's like, all right, I just got my hands dirty. I got clipped. I came back. I don't quite remember. It's my brain's still rebooting. Yep. And those are the fights that, like, you don't want to take damage, but those are the fights that people talk about, people remember. So I was excited for him, man. Great fight. Both guys looked great. And I saw afterward on Joe Schilling's Instagram that he sliced his pinky toe open, and he gets stitches on the pinky toe right here, a horrible spot. So he might be out for not too long, but he might be out for a while, not being able to train on that foot.
Yeah, and he said, he ties Youssef Zalal and Merab Dvalishvili for having 3 wins in 2020 already. So those 3 guys have 3 wins. So yeah, for D-Rod, I guess the thing that was tricky was the ref let D-Rod take a lot of damage. And some people are like, he kind of called it quick when it turned to Dwight. Yeah. You know what I mean? Taking the damage. And, you're like, And that was the similar thing in the first fight, too, with Valiev and Jones, where it looked like Jones was going to lose the fight initially. And then he turned around and won. Same thing where you were
the body shot one?
Yeah, where Jones was the very first fight of the night, black kid with the dyed blonde hair.
Yeah. And
turned it around. And so that was the one thing that, like, people were like, well, that's interesting. The ref, like, let this guy almost die and turn around. Yeah. And then, did he stop it too quickly when he did stop it? But for those fights, like, if you had taken Jones, Dobson, and I think it was Rodriguez or whatever, if you had taken the 3 biggest underdogs on the card, $100. Oh, no, it was Edgar. Yeah, if you took Frankie, Dobson, and Jones, that first guy, you would have won $18,000 off a $100 bet. That's how big of an underdog they were. So the Jones guy was plus 825, or Dobson was plus 825. Frankie, I think, was plus 425 something. It was insane if you had parlayed those. So there really were some fun comebacks on the card. I know that, it was a card where people were like, who's this guy? I don't know that name. But we only had 3 decisions the whole night, and everybody else got finished. So I had a good time.
Yeah, no, fun card to watch. Like you said, it wasn't big names, but it was fun fights. And, man, like, I've been getting jealous. I've been watching these fights, and it's kind of like, last-minute matchmaking, day of the fight, switching things around. And then some of these fights, like we had, this is the second or third fight card that we've had where it's like 9 fights on the card, where sometimes there'll be 13. And you think about it, like, you could have such an exciting fight, but that 13th fight is the one that's more exciting, and you don't get the bonus. So these 9-fight cards, it dramatically ups your percentages of getting these bonuses and whatnot. So, like, I can't wait to get back in there. I see all these guys, like Rodriguez, he's killing it, getting bonuses, getting wins, and it's fun times right now if you're able to fight and you're healthy.
It's funny you say that. I literally had texted that to Joe, like right before. I'm like, fewer fights means more bonus chances. And then, of course, they finished like that. So I thought he was going to get a bonus. And yeah, like I said, in the post-fight interview that Dana did with H.E.A.T, he said he was going to be calling people, giving out some extra checks tonight. So on Saturday. So yeah, so I didn't get to see Ryan Bader's fight. I was in the hotel on Friday and I was quarantined, but it didn't have the Paramount channel. And I just saw the highlights, but I was kind of surprised, and maybe that's just because I'm used to seeing Ryan win a lot now, but I didn't expect that. I know he's bombed, and he, the stuff that he put out after was pretty cool, and he's planning on defending the heavyweight belt and then trying to get that rematch. But did you expect that?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, I didn't see it. It was the same as you. It's just like I popped up the highlight and see Bader get kicked with that 1-2 head kick. Yeah. And then it seemed like an eternity that the finish kept going on and on and on before they stopped it. But it's very surprising. Bader's done tremendous, all right?
Yeah.
Bader's moved to Bellator. I mean, look how much he's accomplished. It was a great move for him. Scott Coker, though, like, he just kind of was saying before the fight, like, I think now that John Jones has moved weight classes, we have the top light heavyweight in the world, and then, like, Bader gets kind of, like, taken out pretty strongly. And so, yeah, it didn't play in favor of Scott Coker, and, of course, it set up Dana White very good, to kind of laugh it off and say, oh, he's cute, isn't he, and this and that. So, yeah, it just wasn't good timing on that part. But, yeah, at least he's a two weight class champ, and he can still continue on success in another division.
Yeah, well, and it is interesting, like you're saying, about the light heavyweight story, because this Saturday we have Anthony Lionheart Smith going up against Aleksandar Rakic, and Anthony is currently, I guess, number 5, Rakic is number 8, and we know that Anthony had the tough fight against Glover. That was just, a month ago. He doesn't make excuses, but there was a lot going on, and this was not long after Anthony had that home invasion, and there was a lot going on. And he, people were like, "Oh, they fight should have been stopped." He's like, "My teeth are fine," all this kind of stuff. But people took that loss and thought it looked really bad. But anyway, he's fine. He's back. He's fighting Rockach, who the last time out in December fought Volkan Oezdemir. He lost. This is only going to be a 3-round main event, though, because it wasn't supposed to be the main event. Initially, it was supposed to be Magny versus who just
Robbie.
got real sick. Yeah.
Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, so it's a 3-round main event, but I know Anthony has a lot to prove here, and Glover is fighting Santos next month and stuff. So the light heavyweight division is on display in the next few weeks, and it is going to be important for some of these guys to make a statement.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that was a tough fight for Smith in that last outing, but I thought he looked very, very sharp in that I don't remember how the fight went, but the first round or two, he looked very, very sharp. It was once Glover connected, you could kind of see the air starting to come out of Anthony Smith, but he looked very sharp from the get-go, and if he could start this fight the same way, he might have an opportunity of finishing his opponent in this fight. It's just Glover, Glover's such a wily veteran. He can take shots. He's very good at countering, and when he gets momentum, he knows how to stay on you, and that's what happened. It was the downfall for Smith in his last fight.
Yeah, and Anthony is training out in Denver, though, with Mark Montoya. He's training at Elevation, at Elevation. Elevation is a team. But, so anyway, that's this Saturday. I'll be going back out there for that one. And I'm working with Rashad and Kiesa on that one, so that'll be fun. So, Well, that's about it. We do put these out as audio podcasts as well. You can find them all at MMA.audio, and that's thanks to the producer, Wade Eck. You can follow him across the board. You can find me on Instagram at KBHeat, Karyn Bryant, everywhere else. Please subscribe while you're here. Alan, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, and follow me, guys, as well on all social media. It's at Alan Jouban. Nice and easy. Check it out, guys.
Thanks for listening and watching. See you next time.